when the cruelty of the one I loved became my strength to live. I never imagined a birthday could be the most painful day of my life. My name is Lorenzo, I'm 16 years old, and I always thought my mother was my greatest protector, someone who would be by my side no matter what. But that day, everything I believed in shattered before my eyes. My mother, Camilla, decided to turn my birthday into a stage of humiliation, and I was the target. Her words hit me like punches. She said she regretted having me, that she'd always wanted a daughter, and that I would never be what she dreamed of. I felt my heart shatter silently while everyone around me watched blankly. It was a complete shock, a mixture of pain, shame, and disbelief. I didn't know whether to cry, scream, or simply run away, never to return. Halfway through the party, I realized that my entire life had been shaped by her judgment and contempt, that I had grown up questioning every step I took, every choice I made, always trying to gain approval that never existed. I'd never felt so alone, even surrounded by people. The feeling of betrayal overwhelmed me. I couldn't understand how someone could say that to their own son, how they could so coldly turn a moment of celebration into something so cruel. My mind whirled, trying to make sense of it, but there was only pain and anger. In the minutes that followed, everything seemed to be in slow motion. I could hear the voices around me, but they were distant echoes, unable to reach my wounded heart. Every laugh, every look, every gesture seemed to scream that I didn't belong there. I felt invisible and exposed, and for the first time I realized that there was no one truly there to protect me from those who should have been caring for me. The feeling of abandonment and fear suffocated me, and for a moment I considered simply disappearing. I no longer had the energy to bear the emotional pain growing within me. But then, from somewhere deep within my chest, I felt a spark of resilience. An inner voice told me that I didn't have to accept this, that my life didn't have to be defined by my mother's contempt. I needed to get up, even though the ground was hot with tears and shame. That was the first time I realized that, despite the fear and pain, I had a strength within me that I hadn't known before. I didn't know how or when, but I needed to act, protect myself, and find people who truly cared about me. That same day, after I managed to leave the house, I found refuge at the home of my Aunt Andrea, with whom my mother hadn't spoken in almost 10 years. Arriving there was like breathing after a long underwater dive. Andrea welcomed me without judgment, only with open arms and a welcoming silence. For the first time in years, I felt I didn't need to hide or explain every thought, that I could simply exist without fear of criticism. It was at that moment that I began to realize that life could have a different perspective, one where I wouldn't be defined by the hatred or regret of someone who should love me. She not only welcomed me physically, but also gave me space to breathe emotionally, to put into words the pain that was trapped inside me. Her presence was a reminder that there are people willing to fight for you, even when those who should fail. For the first time, I felt I wasn't alone in this battle, that there was a possible path to rebuilding my life. As we talked, I began to recall the years of emotional abuse I'd suffered, the constant criticism, the contempt, the feeling of never being good enough. It all came flooding back, but now with a different perspective. I began to understand that it wasn't my fault, that I didn't need to carry the weight of someone else's regret. The anger I felt on that anniversary wasn't just for what she said, but for all the years of silent suffering, for the times I'd tried to reach out and been rejected. It was a moment of painful but necessary clarity. I realized that my life could be different if I chose to fight for myself, if I decided I deserved to be loved and respected. It was the beginning of a process of personal empowerment, where I began planning every step to protect myself legally and emotionally. That same day, with the support of Andrea and my father, Sergio, who was always there, even from afar, I made the decision to no longer accept the abuse. We discussed the possibility of legal action to ensure my protection and well-being, and although it was frightening, I felt a mixture of relief and determination. For the first time in years, I felt I had some control over my life. I would no longer be held hostage by my mother's manipulation and cruelty. The decision to seek justice and protection was a turning point. I knew it would be difficult, painful, and perhaps humiliating, but I also knew it was the necessary path to my emotional freedom. For the first time, I felt hope. For the first time, I felt my life could be my own. The next day, I began to realize that my life was about to change in ways I had never imagined. The relief of being at my aunt's house was mixed with the fear of what lay ahead. I still felt the weight of my mother's words. The humiliation of that birthday haunted me like a shadow, but now I had a plan, and it gave me strength. For the first time, I began to see that my happiness didn't need to depend on the approval of those who never knew how to love me. Talking to Andrea and my father made me realize I wasn't alone, that there were people who would truly support me, who wouldn't abandon me at the first sign of difficulty. It was a strange feeling, but at the same time, liberating. I began to understand that there could be a path where I would feel safe, respected, and valued. And even though I feared the coming confrontation, I felt an unprecedented clarity about what needed to be done. That week, we met to organize the first legal steps. I felt awkward discussing lawsuits and custody because I'd always imagined my family life would be protected by my mother. But realizing that she not only rejected me, but would also try to manipulate the situation to appear victimized put me on edge. Every decision, every conversation with my father and aunt seemed to build a protective wall around me. I feared people's judgment, public exposure, but I knew I had to go through it to ensure my safety. It was a mix of anger and determination, a new feeling that gave me strength. For the first time, I wasn't just a suffering teenager. I was someone who could fight for my life, and that gave me courage. As we navigated documents and meetings, I began to realize how much the abuse had shaped me, but also how much I was learning to rebuild myself. Painful memories surfaced, moments when I tried to please my mother and was ignored or ridiculed. But now, looking at these events from a different perspective, I began to realize they weren't my faults, but her choices. This clarity brought a sense of empowerment, as if I had reclaimed parts of myself that had been lost. I began to feel proud of myself, of not giving up, of seeking help and protection instead of drowning in suffering. For the first time, I felt like my life could be my own, without depending on the whims or regrets of someone who never truly wanted to love me. In the midst of this process, I realized my body and mind were reacting in unexpected ways. Anxiety consumed me some nights. The fear of facing my mother in court made me restless, but I also felt a growing inner strength. Each time I took a deep breath and reminded myself that I was not alone, I felt I could face any challenge. I began to develop a resilience I hadn't previously possessed. For the first time, I realized that my pain didn't have to paralyze me. It could propel me to action. Every tear I shed, every sleepless night became fuel for my determination. I still felt sadness, but now it was mixed with hope and strength. By the end of the week, I was able to sleep a few hours straight, something I hadn't done in years. My body felt lighter, my mind clearer, and I began to plan small things for my routine. It wasn't just about the legal process. It was about reclaiming my life, reclaiming my identity, and learning to value myself. I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt since I was very young. The feeling that I was finally making my own decisions, that I no longer had to endure humiliation, was almost liberating. Every small step that day represented a victory, and I realized that despite all the pain, I was becoming stronger than I ever imagined. For the first time, I felt like my story could have a different ending, where I would be the protagonist of my own life. The day I truly realized I could change my life began with a phone call. My mother, as always, tried to manipulate me, to tell me I was overreacting and that she was the victim. In the past, I would have believed her. I would have felt guilty and ashamed, but this time was different. I took a deep breath, held the phone, and felt something inside me shift. The anger and pain I felt mingled with a clarity that gave me strength. For the first time, I felt I could set boundaries, that I no longer had to accept emotional abuse. This feeling of empowerment was both terrifying and liberating at the same time. For the first time, I realized I could say no to the very person who was supposed to protect me and never had. Every word I didn't say, in that moment, felt like it carried years of pain and silence. I felt the weight of all the suffering I'd endured, but also the strength that was emerging within me. It wasn't just about my mother. It was about me, my life, and my future. For the first time, I felt I had the right to exist without fear, without guilt, and without needing to justify who I was. Over the next few days, I immersed myself fully in the legal process, reading documents, talking to lawyers, and understanding each step of the battle was exhausting, but also surprisingly empowering. For the first time, I realized that my life didn't have to be defined by my mother's contempt. Every detail I analyzed, every strategy we discussed with my father and aunt, gave me the feeling of regaining something that had always been denied me, control over my own story. The anxiety was still there, but now mixed with determination and clarity. I realized I was learning to protect myself, to resist manipulation, and to refuse injustice. For the first time, I felt my pain had a purpose, to motivate me to fight, to value myself, and to seek justice. I was beginning to believe in myself, something that had seemed impossible years ago. Each step in the legal process was a step toward the emotional and physical freedom I so desperately needed. For the first time, I felt I was truly on the path to overcoming it. One day, looking out the window of my aunt's house, I felt something I'd never felt before. Hope, sunlight, streamed through the curtains, and I realized that despite all the pain and humiliation, there was a future. I was still hurt, still angry, sad and tired, but I also felt strong. For the first time, I realized that life could be different, that I could rebuild my identity without depending on the approval of those who never wanted to love me. Every decision I made that day was a step toward emotional freedom. For the first time, I felt that my pain didn't have to define me, that I could choose who I wanted to be and how I wanted to live. The legal process became a way to assert myself, to show myself that I had value and deserved respect. For the first time, I felt I could face the world, even though I was still dealing with deep wounds. I was learning to love myself, even if imperfectly, and that was powerful. For the first time, I felt like my future could be mine. With each meeting, each conversation about custody and child support, I realized how much my mother tried to manipulate the opinions of those around us. She said things to make herself appear like a victim, but each lie she made only strengthened my resolve. For the first time, I felt that my pain had power, that my words and actions could defend my life. I still felt fear, shame, and anxiety, but now mixed with courage and clarity. Each step I took brought me closer to a safe place, where I would no longer need to hide or justify my existence. For the first time, I felt I could be heard, that my truth mattered. I realized I was building a solid foundation for my life, one that no one could destroy. For the first time, I felt I was not powerless, that I could fight and win, even against those who claimed to love me. Every action, every decision was an act of resistance, self-love, and hope. For the first time, I felt I was becoming the person I was always meant to be. The turning point came when my father and aunt decided to confront my mother directly and in an organized manner. Witnessing their Strength, care, and determination to protect my life was an experience that left a deep impression on me. For the first time, I realized that I didn't have to endure the abuse alone, that there were people who truly cared about me and were willing to fight for me. I felt a mixture of pride, relief, and gratitude that I can't fully describe. For the first time, I realized that my pain could be transformed into strength, that the injustice I suffered could become fuel for my own overcoming. Every word, every action, every legal strategy we put into practice gave me more confidence. For the first time, I felt my life could have meaning and direction, that I could exist without fear and with dignity. For the first time, I felt I had the right to be happy and secure, and that no one could take that away from me. This realization gave me the courage to keep going, even when the path seemed impossible. The day I finally felt something was changing for me began with a strange sense of lightness. I still carried the pain of my mother's words, the weight of rejection, but there was something different in the air. The feeling that I was no longer alone in this struggle. My aunt and father were with me, supporting me every step of the way, showing me that my life could be truly protected and cared for. For the first time, I felt I could face any challenge, even the most daunting, because I didn't have to fight alone. The anger and pain were still there, but now transformed into fuel for action, to reclaim my right to be happy and secure. For the first time, I realized that my life didn't need to be defined by the contempt or regret of someone who was supposed to love me. Every conversation, every legal decision, every step we took to protect my life gave me greater clarity and strength. For the first time, I felt that my existence had value, that my emotions were legitimate, and that I deserved to be protected. This gave me the courage to stand up to my mother, to resist manipulation, and to fight for what was rightfully mine. During this time, I realized how much my past experiences had hardened me and at the same time prepared me for resilience. Memories of nights feeling alone, rejected, and humiliated came flooding back. But now, with a different perspective, I no longer needed to blame myself or try to please someone who never cared. For the first time, I felt I could put my pain into words, that I could acknowledge my feelings without fear of judgment. Each painful memory became a reminder that I had survived, that I had the strength to not only endure, but to act. For the first time, I realized that my life could have purpose, that my suffering could be used as motivation to fight for justice and emotional freedom. The knowledge that I could change my story gave me energy and hope, even amidst the chaos my mother still tried to create. For the first time, I felt that life could be mine and that I had the right to fight for it. As we prepared for the hearings, I began to realize the true impact of what was happening. My mother was trying to manipulate family and community opinion by spreading lies about my father and me. It was difficult to hear, difficult to see people I thought could support me believe falsehoods, but this experience taught me something essential. The truth always finds its way. For the first time, I realized that my clarity about the facts, my courage to speak the truth, and the unconditional support of my father and aunt were stronger than any lie she could spread. I still felt fear and anxiety, but now I also felt confidence and determination. Every challenge that arose became an opportunity to prove to myself that I could overcome any obstacle, that my life didn't need to be defined by someone else's abuse or manipulation. For the first time, I felt like I truly had control over my own destiny. The day of the hearing was intense and filled with emotions I had never felt before. A sense of fear mixed with anticipation overwhelmed me, but at the same time, I felt a newfound clarity about who I was and what I deserved. I knew my life was about to change forever, that every word and action in that courtroom could redefine my future. For the first time, I felt I had the strength to stand up to my mother, to stop allowing her manipulation to affect me. I was ready to demand my protection, my dignity, and my right to live without fear or humiliation. The presence of my father and aunt, And their support every step of the way gave me the courage to stand firm, to resist pressure, and to fight for what was right. For the first time, I felt I no longer had to carry the weight of years of abuse alone. I was beginning to taste the emotional freedom I so desperately desired. When the verdict finally came, I felt a mixture of relief, joy, and disbelief. The court granted full custody to my father, and my mother was ordered to pay retroactive child support. I still felt pain from her words and actions, but I also felt strength and hope. For the first time, I felt that my efforts, my courage, and my pain had paid off. I knew my life would no longer be defined by anyone's abuse, that I had earned protection and the chance to rebuild myself. Every tear shed, every night of anxiety and fear, every difficult decision made became a step toward freedom and resilience. For the first time, I felt that my life could be my own, that I could be happy and secure, and that nothing could erase the strength I had discovered within myself. For the first time, I felt that my story was beginning to be written by me, not by others. After the verdict, I felt something I'd never felt before, a mixture of profound relief and hope. It wasn't that the pain had disappeared, because it was still there, raw, pulsing, reminding me of what I'd been through. But now, for the first time, I felt like I'd overcome something greater. The feeling of powerlessness, the constant manipulation, the contempt from those who were supposed to love me. For the first time, I felt like my life was no longer defined by my mother's cruelty, but by my effort to rebuild who I was and who I wanted to be. I still had open wounds, but I felt I could walk with them, that they weren't obstacles, but marks of my resilience. For the first time, I felt I could truly breathe, that my story would no longer be written by rejection, but by the love and care of people who truly matter. I began to see a possible future, even if still fraught with fear and uncertainty. With the continued support of my father and aunt, I began to rebuild my routine. Small daily victories, like feeling safe at home again, studying without fear or guilt, and simply living without the constant shadow of my mother's contempt, gave me immense strength. Each small achievement was silently celebrated within me because I realized how much I was fighting for my own life and dignity. For the first time, I felt I could trust myself to make decisions, that I had the right to prioritize my happiness and emotional security. The feeling of finally being protected gave me the courage to face the challenges that lay ahead. And for the first time, I felt my life had direction, purpose, and value. Throughout this process, I learned to identify my own emotions, to acknowledge the fear, anger, and sadness, but also the strength, hope, and resilience that emerged alongside them. For the first time, I realized that my painful experiences didn't destroy me. They strengthened me, teaching me to fight, to set boundaries, and to recognize who truly cares about me. I still felt pain, but now with clarity and control. For the first time, I felt I could look to the future without fear, with the certainty that my life could be guided by conscious choices and by people who truly love me. Every tear, every night of anxiety, every feeling of rejection had been transformed into learning and growth. What impacted me most was realizing that despite all the humiliation and abuse, I managed to find the strength within myself and in the support of the right people to change my story. For the first time, I felt that my life was my own, and that no one could take away my right to be happy and secure. The feeling of liberation was intense, even mixed with the painful memory of everything I'd been through. For the first time, I realized that overcoming doesn't mean forgetting the pain, but learning to live despite it, to use each scar as a reminder of the strength I discovered within myself. I felt deeply that my life could finally have meaning, purpose, and joy. Today, when I look back, I realized that that anniversary was a turning point I never imagined. I felt fear, anger, sadness, shame, and pain, but I also discovered courage, strength, hope, and resilience. For the first time, I felt I could breathe, live, and grow without being defined by the contempt of those who were supposed to love me. My life is now mine, built step by step, and even though some of the pain still lingers, I know I can face it and move forward. The path was painful and difficult, but every tear and every effort was worth it. For the first time, I felt like I was the master of my own destiny, and that my story finally was mine to write.